Six Flags America. This park will see its final guests in November of 2025, as Six Flags has announced its closure or possible sale. This park has been criticized as a poorly operated park for years, but it has seen a lot of investment, including new parts to bring rides back into operation, and retracking and refurbishment of most of its roller coasters. But just how good of a park was it? And will it really be missed? Find out in this review. As a native of Houston, Texas, I'm still sad about the closure of a local park in Astroworld, even if its coaster lineup was small by today's standards. I loved some of those smaller coasters, as they were perfect for me as a kid. Even if Grand Texas is promising a full park beyond their Big Rivers complex for the Houston area, I'm not holding out hope. So to see a park close that serves not one but two major metro areas in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and is the only local amusement park, hurts me as it really hits close to home. King's Dominion is about 2 hours away plus traffic, so kind of, but not really. Worse, this park has some really good bones that could have made it something really special. With my 2 days here, I wasn't able to do everything in the park. Part of this is I visited on a school day with larger than normal crowds. I already made peace with the fact that I would need to buy a flash pass on that day. Some of it though was that I flew in early and flew out at night on my 2 days at the park, which was really incredible that I could pair it with the airport 45 minutes away, but it did mean that I did not have 2 full days at Six Flags America. Still, I was able to do all the coasters multiple times, with the exception of Batwing that was closed for repairs, and I saw 2 shows which I really enjoyed. My visit also occurred at the beginning of June as the park was preparing for full summer operations. So, with the various changes to the park even over the course of the year, that may have affected my experience as well. The park opens onto Main Street, as many amusement parks do, and this is a really nice feel with it taking heritage from more of a southern vibe. Six Flags parks normally don't take this level of theming into account, so this is obviously left over from when the park was first built, without the strong focus on roller coasters. This section of the park doesn't have much beyond the shops and stalls, though there is a show theater here that was being used for Rhythmix, which was great to see as a nice mixture of different cultures and music, and a really nice break from that hot summer sun. For the older vibes of theming and shows, it was great to know that the park at least had something to use that old building for. The rest of this area bleeds into Olde Boston, but is largely a collection of smaller flat rides that just weren't popular with how the park was spread out, including the Flying Carousel, Teacups, the Carousel, and Minutemen Motors, which did allow guests to ride even as single riders. This bled into the Looney Tunes Movie Town, which was a really awesome kids section with solid theming on both the various rides and just around the area as a whole. There was even a stage with a show for kids here, but I did not get to see it on my visit. This might be an older style kids area that Six Flags themed really well, but I was certainly glad to see something like this. The kiddie coaster over here allowed adults, and there was a fair amount of older kids riding Great Chase on my visit. With nice theming to Roadrunner and Coyote, this coaster complemented the area while having the feel of being a complete ride between a decent drop, helix, and some quasi-bunny hills on the turn, and with extra laps to really make it feel great. Well, for a kiddie coaster at least. The Mardi Gras area was pretty lacking in theming. After enjoying the various Mardi Gras shows at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, I was excited to see an area themed to this. But this area barely seemed capable of selling alcohol, let alone bringing strong New Orleans vibes. with loose theming, mainly the names on the flat rides of French Quarter Flyer, Voodoo Drop, and Big Easy Speedway. This area tried to be tied together, and I imagine if Six Flags would have kept investing in the park, it would have gotten a facelift similar to SteamTown. Raging Cajun is a spinning wild mouse coaster with Cajun theming on the cars and some around it, but overall looks pretty bare, which is on par for the area as a whole. This simple family coaster spins a lot more than others that I've been on, so we did a fine job with laterals in the first half and had great spinning in the second half. Wild One is one of the oldest roller coasters in the world, being built in 1917, though it was relocated to Six Flags America in 1986. Still, it has a nice out and back layout with some decent, though not great drops, and a finale with a nice sense of speed and pretty darn good laterals on that final helix. With the tight restraints of the trains though, you can't get too good of airtime or even laterals on that finale, but the forces still made this coaster pretty enjoyable. On the opposite side of the park, SteamTown is a refurbishment of the park's Wild West area, and it looked great for 2025 with a fresh coat of paint. Steamwhirler was the eye-catching flat ride, though with low capacity and high positive Gs, these are not fun flat rides, at least for me, though I completely understand why they are popular additions to parks. Electro Derby was the bumper cars in this section, and Quantum Canyon Rapids was a retheming of the River Rapids where you traveled back in time to see dinosaurs, which is a really cool facelift for a ride like this. The coaster in this area was Professor Screamore's Skywinder, which was a refurbishment of the SLC Mind Eraser. This got new trains with vest restraints, so it was generally smoother and at least much easier to ride. With the modifications, this is the best SLC that I've ridden so far, at least towards the front, as I was able to enjoy it without it beating me up too much. Professor Screamore also got his own show in the adjacent exposition center that was set up for a quasi-Wild West stunt show. The show was actually pretty long and had some neat dialogue and characterization, as well as a few various stunt and fight scenes, some that even spilled over into the audience. The acting levels seemed to be a little underwhelming though. I might have just seen a very early show for this cast, but the idea behind having a show to incorporate an area's theme is an awesome idea that I really wish more Six Flags parks actually did. Chesapeake feels like a catch-all area with Roar and Firebird, and I might be expanding it a bit to include the other flat rides that I just haven't mentioned yet, like Cyclone, High Seas, Pirate's Flight, and Capital Railways, that did not seem to operate on slower days like when I visited. As for the coasters, Roar was one of the first Great Coaster International coasters and had an ambitious layout for a Woody with solid drops and sharp turns that mixed airtime and laterals in a fun way. This coaster has been notorious for being rough, and Six Flags America spent a lot of time and money retracking it to try and make it slightly smoother. Still, I found it an enjoyable ride, but that final section could be too rough for some. Firebird kept an awesome fire effect and had a fun twisting layout for B&M Floorless, as it debuted as a stand-up coaster. The elements and drops played well, despite their size and how they looked, so I did enjoy the forces that this coaster gave. What I did not enjoy were the terrible transitions that had me bashing my head and or neck into the restraints. I haven't been too upset about headbanging in the past, but this coaster was brutal. And that was on top of a miserably slow moving line. This is one coaster that I won't miss from this park. The back section of the park was added by Six Flags, and you can tell this as you walk onto Wild One to get back there. An extra kids area that was even themed with Thomas the Tank Engine at one point sits beside this walkway, but it was abandoned well before the 2025 season. Despite having only a few rides, this area was packed on my visits to the park, while the front felt pretty empty. And on my second day, that was with Superman Ride of Steel being the only operating coaster in this section. 2 large flat rides in Wonder Woman Lasso of Truth, a tall swing ride, and Harley Quinn's Spinsanity, a large pendulum ride, seemed to be really popular with guests. Riddle Me This was closed awaiting parts, and Penguin's Blizzard River offered a water ride for this section of the park, though it was closed waiting to open later in the summer on my visit. Batwing was also located at the far back of the section, like in a dumb location that was a long walk from everything else. This was my number 1 bucket list coaster, as I was hoping to ride this unique style of Vekoma Flying Dutchman before it closed forever. But alas, it broke down right before my visit and ended up being closed most of the 2025 season from what I can tell. Joker's Jinx offers an enjoyable Flight of Fear clone with a spaghetti bowl that you could walk right next to. This was an annoyingly long corridor for this section, but super cool for the views of the roller coaster that it offered. Towards the front, this coaster had extra airtime, especially into and out of the Cobra Room, which I was really not expecting, so it played much better than other clones that I've ridden. Superman Ride of Steel seemed like an average hypercoaster with some drops, airtime hills, and strong helixes on my back row rides, with it being very comparable to Titan in my mind. But riding in the front or even the second row really blew me away with the sense of speed and added a little bit extra floater airtime, and when combined with a nice bunny hill finale, made this an enjoyable top coaster for this park. As for operations, these were a common complaint over the course of this park's history. All coasters except Wild One, for some reason, were only running 1 train on my visits. On the quieter Wednesday, this was reasonable as most coasters didn't develop too much of a wait, though you could still easily have a 15 to 20 minute wait for some coasters, particularly Firebird, that also seemed to be popular, and Superman Ride of Steel. But the larger issue was just how slow the dispatches were, as it could easily take 3 to 4 minutes to send a train out, and that was on top of Superman and Firebird both breaking down while I was in line for them, causing even lengthier delays. Flash Pass for most rides did route you directly to the station to wait for the next train. This was true for Superman Ride of Steel, Joker's Jinx, Firebird, and Roar. Raging Cajun and Professor Screamore routed you to the exit, so you could also pick your seat first. Wild One's Flash Pass line merged slightly before the station, but there was no attendant here, so I had to just walk all the way around to the regular queue since there was no wait, with 2 train operations. Superman, likewise, did not always have a Flash Pass grouper, and even a station wait could still be close to 20 minutes with its slow dispatches. So that was most of the wait anyways. If you were just coming to ride a few coasters and didn't mind waiting a little extra, these operations were reasonable given the crowd levels that I experienced. But this park could have done a lot more to really pump out trains and really give guests a top-notch experience. More interestingly, on my visit, very few food stalls were open. Most were closed, with only Johnny Rockets, the stall across from Firebird, and the main stall in Gotham City being open, from what I can remember. This caused these stalls to have really long lines, so despite bringing my Six Flags cup on the airplane with me, I barely got any refills, as they just were not worth a 10 to 20 minute wait. Overall, how good was Six Flags America? This was an interesting park with some nice original theming, and areas that could have been dressed up to make a good-looking park. The coaster lineup offered a mixture of classic and thrill coasters, though did lack top-tier coasters beyond Superman, though this lineup likely is a solid mix of family thrills that Six Flags seems to focus on anyways. Operations were a bit sluggish, especially given the light or otherwise manageable crowds that I encountered, and there didn't seem to be a priority to make guests have a truly excellent experience with how quickly they could ride rides. The show lineup was decent, neither show I saw was excellent, but they were a solid family complement to the various coasters and flat rides at the park. Without anything extra special, I can see why this is seen as one of the lesser Six Flags parks, but it still was perfectly enjoyable to spend a day or two visiting here. With investment in upgrading the theming around this park, it could have turned into a really nice looking place. With its location and ability to be combined with King's Dominion and Busch Gardens Williamsburg on a coaster trip, its loss will be felt by those trying to make that trip a solid theme park trip, as well as just local residents who will no longer have a park within easy reach of their homes. What was your experience at Six Flags America? Are you sad to see this park close? Let me know, and as always, Top Kun Krop.